So let's summarize the effects of linear transformations on the measures the mean and standard deviation. If our original measure is mu for the mean and sigma for the standard deviation, and we multiply by a constant a, then that new measure will be a times mu, and the absolute value of a times sigma. And we have to make sure we do this absolute value thing because remember that the standard deviation is always positive. It's the square root of the variance, which is the sum of a bunch of squared terms. So we have to make sure that even if a might be negative, that when we multiply to find that standard deviation, we use the absolute value. If our original measure is mu for the mean and sigma for the standard deviation, then when we add a constant b, the new measure will be mu plus b. So we'll just add that constant to the mean. But our standard deviation is unchanged, and that is not surprising because we remember when we looked before at what happens when you add some constant to an entire data set. It doesn't change the distance between the values. It only changes where they sit on the number line. If we multiply by a constant and add a constant, so for instance ax plus b, and our original measures are mu and sigma, then the new measures will be a mu plus b. So both the value that we multiply and the value that we add will have an effect on the mean. But the value that we add, again, has no effect on the standard deviation because it does not change how spread out the data values are. So let's look at some examples using StatCrunch. Let's suppose that we have the data values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We could find the mean for that data set by going to Stat, Summary Statistics, Columns, Variable 1, Compute, and we're going to get this mean is 3 and the standard deviation is 1.58, or 1.6 if we round to 3 decimal places, if we round to 1 decimal place. But let's do this. Let's do all of those transformations that we talked about. Let's multiply by the constant 2. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click Data, Compute Expression. I'm going to build this expression, and what I want to do is multiply, so 2 times, every value that's in that column, variable 1. So I'm going to multiply them by 2. So I'll click variable 1 and then click add column, and then that adds it to the expression. So now my expression says 2 times variable 1. I'm going to click OK. And I can label this column if I want, and I think I will. I think I'll call it 2x. Hit compute, and now it tells me that a new column has been added to the table. So now I have a column that has each one of these values multiplied by 2. And I'm going to do another one. I'm going to multiply each one of those values by -2 and see what happens there. So I'm going to click Data, Compute Expression, build my expression, -2 times variable 1, add column, and now my expression is complete. I'll click OK, and I'll label this one too -2x. And now another column has been added, and these are then the negative values of all these here. And let's do another one. Let's add 2 to those values. So I'll click Data, Compute Expression. I'm going to build an expression again. This time I'm going to go -2 times variable 1, add column so that it now winds up in the expression box, and then I'm going to add 2 to that. Click OK, and I'm going to label this one also minus 2x plus 2. Click Compute, and now I have all 4 of these columns here in my spreadsheet. I'm going to get the stats for all 4 of those columns. So I'm going to click Stat, Summary Statistics, Columns, and then I'm going to click the first one. I'm going to hold Shift and press the down button until they're all selected in the active box. The mean and standard deviation are already selected here, so I'm going to click Compute. Now let's note here what happened with the mean each time. The mean for the first one was 3. The mean for the second one was 6. The mean for the third one was minus 6, and the mean for the fourth one was minus 4. Now, we decided that the effect of each of these transformations would be, for the mean, if you multiply the mean. If you add that quantity. If you do both add, or rather multiply and then add. So in our first one, we had 3, multiply by 2, we get 6. Multiply that by minus 2, multiply our original by minus 2, we get minus 6. Multiply our original by minus 2 and then add 2 and we get minus 4. So everything that we expected to happen with the mean happened. Now let's take a look at the standard deviation. What we said would happen is that if we multiply by a constant, then the standard deviation would be multiplied by the absolute value. And what we should find then, in both of those columns where we have the negative multiplied by the data values, the negative 2, we should find the same standard deviation. Here we have 2x, okay, so we have 1.41, and notice that they're all the same. And actually, they're all 2 times the original standard deviation. If we multiply that by 2, we get each of these values. So these transformations then that we talked about are holding up when we perform these operations with an actual data set.